Hi all, today I'll be changing the controller port on this Turbo Duo. I got this a couple of weeks ago from eBay, and unfortunately the port is bad. The seller neglected to mention that on his listing. Cosmetically it's pretty nice. There's no sound or video issues with this, and the games load right up. So it's just a controller port. So I figured we could change that. We'll start by removing these 5 screws from the bottom. I'm using this special console bit to remove the screws. Now the top should just come right up. And there's the top off. And here's the inside. There's the controller port. We're going to have to desolder it and replace it. Next we'll need to unscrew the PCB board. There's a couple of screws in here that we'll take off. After removing the screws that were holding the PCB board down, we now have to desolder this connection and this connection. They're preventing us from removing the board because it's attached to the shielding. So after we desolder these two joints, we'll be able to pull it off the shielding. So now those two connections are loose. So now we should be able to pull the shielding out. We are now able to pull this board off the bottom shielding. Here's where it was preventing us. It was attached, the bottom was attached to the top shielding. And all we need to do is disconnect these the CD-ROM reader connectors. I'm just pulling the connectors off the CD-ROM reader. Let's just use just a little bit of force. And there we go, we got these guys are off. The other connection here that we have to disconnect is, actually we have to desolder this connection. I believe that's to ground. So I'll just do that right now. So here we have the board disassembled from the casing. We'll be removing the port. We'll be desoldering these joints right here. I confirmed that the controller port was indeed faulty by performing a continuity test. I tested for continuity on every pin. All I did was insert this pin inside each of the controller port pins. And then I made contact with these 8 little pins above here until I got a response or failed to get a response. So that one's working. If I put it in again, I get confirmation. And what I also did was when I inserted it, I moved it around to make sure it was a solid connection. And this indeed is a solid connection. I think this was the bad pin, or this is the bad pin. Yeah, this is the bad pin. There's no response. So I'm assuming it's broken inside. There's a connection, the pin broke inside. I'll be replacing the port with this mini DIN 8-pin connector. Fortunately, NEC appears to have used off-the-shelf parts when they built this system, so that's good for us because we're able to find replacements like this one. This part I got it off digikey.com. You know, they sell a lot of electronic parts and components. Here is the controller port removed, and here's a new one. I cleaned up the solder. You know, took a little doing, but we finally got it. Just I was very careful and I did it slowly because I didn't want to mess up anything. I didn't want to rush it and break anything else, so I did it slowly so you could, you know, just have some patience when you're doing this kind of work. You don't want to rush it and ruin it. So that's the new one. He sits in pretty well. Same dimensions as the old one. So now it's time to solder in. I did do a continuity test on this one just to make sure before I solder it that everything was working correctly. And also what I did was when I ordered them from DigiKey, I actually ordered 2 of them just in case I ruined one or one was defective, so just to be certain. This one looks fine, so I'm gonna just solder him back in. So I got the new one soldered in there. I got all the 8 pins soldered, and there's 3 post pins just for support to help the port or the socket. And what I'm going to do is just one last continuity test, make sure I didn't cross any wires or over solder any of the connectors. So here's the unit all assembled, well, almost assembled. I just need to reconnect these hardwired ones. This one here, this one. They just get soldered back to ground. And then I'll put the case back on, and then we'll give it a test. So here's the unit all assembled, and there's a new controller port. I mean, it's right on. It's right in the center. The component and the replacement component fit just right. Now it's time to test it out. So here's the fixed controller port. It lines up right in the center, and there's a solid connection now with the controller. Real snug, real nice. Now let's test it. I got a game in there. So we get the boot screen right up. Hit the run button. Works. System is spinning. Everything looks good so far. There's our game.
In der guten alten Zeit lebten die Menschen noch wohl.
Okay, up down is working. So all the buttons are working. Everything is responsive. And here's a hue card. It's also loading just fine. fully functioning Turbo Duo with a new controller port. Overall, it wasn't too difficult. It was relatively simple what needed to be done. Just swap out the old component with a new one. But I think the hardest part was just getting the solder off the old one and pulling that guy off. But once we pulled that off, it was pretty easy after that. I just thought I'd share my experience with you so you can see that it is possible to replace that part if you're having any issues. So good luck if you need to do it. Thanks for watching.